Hi everybody, Kat here. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be working, I thought it'd be nice to show you how I paint a few of my Christmas cards. I don't have a huge mailing list, but I do have some people pretty far away. So if I get them done soon, then I can mail them off and I won't worry that they won't arrive in time. So that's just something we're going to work on today. There's lots to do, so let's get started. Small section of the video I decided to speed up because it's just me doing the background and it took up a lot of time and I needed a lot of drawing time. So I'll just explain briefly what I'm doing here. I have used Antwerp blue. I've wet my paper and I'm just covering with a fairly even coat of the Antwerp blue, and I'm adding in some sap green where I'm going to want my pine branches to be. And on the other side, I decided to use the Antwerp blue and I mixed some indigo in with it. So just so it would be a slightly different card than the other one. I don't usually make them exactly the same. And I am going to be using salt, so I really need this to be a little deeper than normal, the background, because the salt won't show up. The effects of the salt won't show up if I don't deepen the color. So I add a little more blue on the one on the right, and that should do the trick. So stay tuned. Okay, so now this is all dry. I was a little heavy-handed with the salt, I realize, but I kind of like it. And if I don't like it, I'm going to add stuff to it later. So I'm not nervous about this. So because I'm right-handed, I'm going to start on this side. I'm going to take just a long brush that this is called a script liner, or some people call it a rigger. So I'm just going to make like a little bit brown. I shouldn't use that brush to make the brown. It's very, it's kind of a delicate brush, so I'll just use one of my cheaper brushes that's stronger and mix some brown and some, I think I'm going to take a bit of raw sienna. Kind of just lighten it up a little bit. I don't want it to be too dark. It's just more of a guide than anything. Roll my rigger around in there, get it good and wet right up to the ferrule. And I'm going to do the same thing I have over here, kind of, I'm just going to come from the side with my hand straight out. I'm going to make a few branches. Maybe I'll make one come in all the way across. And later I might put one here, or you just never know. Since I have this mixed up before it dries out, I'm going to add that here. So I'm going to start this way so I can see what I'm doing. And it does not have to be perfect. And it's okay if it's a little thicker, because you kind of want us to be able to see it. Okay, I think I want my pine cone here, so I'm going to just dab this part away. So just going to re-wet that area and dab it off, and then it's gone. And this one, I think I'm going to have the pine cone coming from that branch right there. So I'm going to show you two different ways to paint a pine cone. There are many varieties of pine cone, but I want you to just see there's all different ways to paint them as well. So to start with, I'm going to mix a mixture of burnt sienna, which when you're doing anything in nature, you're going to find you use this color a lot. It's just a color you see in nature. And what I have is a filbert brush right here. This I got at the Dollarama, and I love it because it's rounded here, and I don't know, I just love it. It's very, very, very soft. It's quite absorbent. So I'm going to start up here. I'm just going to make the top of my pine cone, And then I'm going to make some shapes here. And it's okay if the blue is showing through, because we can always go over that later. And it's going to be the inside of the pine cone where it's dark in there anyway. Okay. And so as we come down, they're getting a little bit more rounded. Like that. Something on the side there. Really doesn't have to be perfect, because in art, your brain tells you what things are. You recognize them. I'm just adding a teeny bit more color into these while they're wet. Okay, and I'm going to do some more down here and here. If you don't have this brush, just use whatever brush you're comfortable working with. You can do this shape with any brush you want. I find this easy. It's kind of done for you. Okay. So I think we're going to leave it at that and let that dry. And that's the biggest, hardest thing to do in watercolor, is to do not touch stuff when it is wet. Everybody's guilty of it. I am very guilty of it because I'm so impatient. Now on this side, I'm going to do a different kind. It's also kind of a loosey-goosey one, but it's a different shape. So this one, I'm going to take some raw sienna, and I wonder if you'd like to see my colors. I don't know if you do. I wonder if you can see those. No, you can't. I wonder if I put them here. Okay. So this is my raw sienna right here. And I'm going to mix it in with my burnt sienna. Just to kind of calm the burnt sienna a little bit, because I'm going to need it. I'm going to need it in a thicker consistency in the next step. So I don't want it to be too dark. So this one, I didn't make a stem, so I'm just going to start the pine cone right here. So this one's going to be this kind of pine cone that it sort of curls outward. And like I said with the other one, if they don't touch, that's quite all right. We're going to fix that later. You're not going to have these big gaps in your painting. You can make your brush move around. You can make these as big or as small as you like. I went with this size brush. This one is a 6 in this set. This is my Pure Sable. I got them at Omer Dessert. This is it's not called that anymore. It's called Dessert. It's in Canada. And because we don't have a Hobby Lobby and a Jackson's and all that. It's kind of like a Jackson's. They're made in China. I like a squirrel brush, actually, and I feel guilty saying that because it is an animal, and you know, I don't necessarily like the idea that an animal is in my hand, you know, painting. But anyway, let's not talk about that. You can get them at Omer Dessert if you're interested. Look online. Not Omer Dessert, just Dessert. It was called that for years. Okay. Now they're coming down straighter now because there we go. While this is damp, I'm going to go in with straight up at the tops with the burnt sienna. We're just going to add some shade to it. Just a bit of shadow closer to the tops because they're closer to the inside of the pine cone. And when you want to use the tip of your brush, you put your hand up at almost at a 90 degrees. Sometimes it's at 90 degrees, sometimes it's almost there. Okay. So we're going to let this dry. And like every other watercolor you've ever done, there's a very ugly stage and you just have to live with it. This is not quite dry yet, and I don't want to, I'm tempted, but I'm not going to go in yet. I'm going to do my pine needles. I can't do all of them because some of them are going to come over the pine cone, but I will do what I can. So once again with my rigger brush, if you don't have a rigger brush, choose a brush that comes to a nice point, whatever is comfortable in your hand. But for example, some people can do this, but I couldn't take this brush, which has a nice point, and make nice lines. I know I wouldn't. I would mess it up. So I tried to take my rigger brush. I already lost it. Oh my goodness. No, that's not. Here it is. It's a script liner. The first green I'm going to use, because we're going to use all different ones, is this is sap green. Okay. And you're going to put your hand up at a 90-degree angle. I will do as best I can. So mine may not turn out very nice because I'm trying not to block the camera. And very, very gently flick the brush from the branch out to midair. Start in the middle. And don't be perfect. Don't, just very lightly. Go sideways, let it curl, let your brush curl, come forward. So the higher up your hand is, the thinner those lines will be, and the freer they'll be. You see how I'm holding my brush up here? If I hold it down here, I'll show you a couple of strokes. If I hold it down here, this is what I do. So I come here, and I do this, and I do this. And you see how they look exactly the same, and they're not as pleasing to look at. So it's much better if you hold your brush up higher and you let your fingers do the work. Okay? It's good practice. And I'm sorry if and try to go in different directions, not backwards, because everything grows forward on this kind of pine. But you can curl it, you can go straight, go forward, go sideways. And of course you will turn your work to make yourself as comfortable as possible. Okay, that's as far as I can go right now. I'll come and do this one. I'm going to use the same green. I'm running out of my green. I'll have to get my tube and fill it. Make sure it's pretty liquidy, not total water, say like milk. And this one I'm going to make them a bit longer. And because we work from light to dark in watercolor, the next step we're going to be doing is to add darker flicks of color. Now it's not that you don't have to add a lot of it. It'll bring a bit of depth to your branches, and it'll look like there's more. They're more full. When you're working with a tiny brush, this is always the downfall, is that it doesn't hold a ton of paint, so you have to keep going back to fill it up. So if you can do this with a bigger brush, if you have the steady hand and then do it. But I know my limitations. I will make a mess, especially because I'm trying to go quickly right now. So that's dry enough, I think. I'm going to actually just pass the hairdryer over it. So now that we're back, we're going to work on this little guy over here. I'm coming in with some burnt sienna. It's kind of like, yeah, I guess it's like milk, like whole milk. So I'm going to try to work on these shadows now in here. So I'm going to come down from each of the top of the I don't know what they're called, those doohickeys. I know there's a name to them, but I can't remember the name of them right now. I'll look for it. I'll see if I can find out. Okay, so I'm just adding a bit of color to these because they're looking a little dreary. Because you can see this the sky painting underneath, so we're just going to add a bit of color to them. And it gives them a little bit of shape and shadow. Okay. Like I said, these are just one way to do them. There's all different ways to do them. I'll have a couple of drawings at the end for you if you like. You can try those, or you can just do this. Try what I did here. When I come around the sides here, I'm making them a little darker just so you can, it's defined, like you can tell it's rounded. This is very, very loose, relaxing. There's no need to stress about it. And even if you left it like this, you can tell that that's a pinecone. Okay. And while this is wet, I'm going to add some, sorry, I'm having a brain freeze. It's called indigo. So I'm adding some indigo in there. And I'm looking for a pretty dark brown, but that's a bit too, you can make a black with this. So I'm going to go back into my burnt sienna, just so that it's nice and rich, you see. And I'm going to add it in here. Whoops. Right in here. Where the blue is, where you can see the blue inside. You might be able to see the sky through some of the outer doohickeys, but not in the middle here. Not in the middle. This is pure pinecone. And apparently these close and open periodically, and they release seeds. Interesting. And they can last on a tree for a number of years, the same pine cones, which I didn't know until yesterday. I read about them. Fun little tidbit. I used to collect them when we were kids, and then when I had kids, we collected them again and painted them and rolled them in. We would paint them and then roll them in glitter. Oh God, the glitter. Anyway, so then we'd hang them on the tree, and they were actually our. There was such a nice decoration on the tree because it just went with the tree. So if you want to outline each one, that is up to you. I'm going to do it right now just to show you what it would look like. You might want to use that darker that I had. The darker with the indigo. I'll add a bit more indigo to it just so there's a slight variation in the dark. Okay. I'm getting quite the glare here. There. Gonna leave that be. Oh, I see one little spot I just want to touch before I go to the other side. Just right here. It's hard to stop, eh? Once you start, you just get right into it. Okay. And on this side, I'm going to do something very similar. So I'm going to make more of that color. So we're just establishing our shadows. I'm going to take some of this because I love that color that I just made. I'm going to add some indigo to it, just a bit. See how dark that gets? It's a beautiful brown. But you can get it to go black. Burnt sienna and ultramarine blue are often used together to make beautiful grays and browns and a black, but ultramarine blue separates. It looks granular, and if you're not looking for a granular kind of painting, then you're not going to like the outcome. So that's why I use indigo, or I use a different blue. So here I'm going into to define all the dark spaces where you wouldn't be able to see inside. That's where I want to define. And this is very painterly. This is that's what I would call this kind of artwork. Some people are looking more for, they don't want their brush strokes to show, and they want hyper realism, which is, it's not wrong, it's fine. Just don't be hard on yourself, because that's not all there is to art. People think if you draw an apple, it has to look like exactly like the one in your fridge. And I actually prefer the one that doesn't. So like, everybody's taste is different. So this is pretty good. I'm just going to add a little bit of this beautiful color here. Just making sure it's watery enough, you see. And I'm just going to come down some of these. Oh boy, I really wish I knew what they were. You know what? I'm going to pause this video and I'm going to look. Be right back. Okay, I hope you're in for a good laugh. I actually Googled what are the thingies on a pine cone. Sorry, I have to pause. Okay, I'm back. The thingies on a pine cone are called scales. Isn't that difficult? So now we know they're called scales, not thingies. I'm just going with a light wash of raw sienna on the tips. And that's because I can see a bit of the blue. When you want to do a background and you know, like this, you know you want something on it, what you would do is lay it down, and then right around where you think your object's going to be, is you can wad up a soft tissue and blot up the paint right there, just so it softly becomes white paper again. Try that next time. Like I could do this but I just didn't. I don't mind it like this, because I'm going to be putting some snow, so I don't really mind the way it looks right now. And just a bit more of this dark, just for some of these here, just in here. I'm just dabbing it here and there. You'll know when you're finished. You know when you're finished? Some people say, oh, you know, I never know when I'm finished. You're finished when you're fed up, when you say you're finished. When you look at your painting and you say, I don't know what else to do, I can't do any more, that's when you're finished. Oh, there, I'm liking that. So this side, I do want to add a teeny bit more dark. Just a little bit around some of these undefined areas. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I am being a little bit fussy because it's a card. And you know, if you send this to somebody who doesn't paint, they're just going to be thrilled, and they're going to say, oh, I want to hang it on my wall. So I used to write messages on the front, like, you know, if it's somebody's birthday, or Merry Christmas, or Happy Hanukkah, or whatever you're making your card for. I no longer write those messages now, because people want to keep the artwork. There, I just wanted to make a bit of a definition there. Back to the pine boughs. So I can still use this brush. I believe I'm going to go in with what my set, a lot of sets, it's called Hunter Green. This is by Paul Rubens, my Hunter Green. I have different sets. And this is, I like their Hunter Green. It's nice and cool. I'll put it here so you can see. Can you see? I'm saying I'll put it here, but can you see? Yeah, right there. It's a nice cool green. So I'll put it on this one first because I'm right-handed. So what the darks do is they bring out the light colors that you have underneath. Oddly enough, so you don't need as much dark as you do the light. Because this is just highlighting the light. It's not, you don't want to cover your lights. And since you're working with like strokes of paint, you can always go in and add more light after, because there's all these tiny little micro spaces kind of in between your needles. I'm going right over this pine cone. And you're not going to see it a lot because the pine cone's quite dark. And I'm going to do these. So I'm going to try and sit. And it's a bit, I hope you can see it. Even it's a little bit awkward for me to paint, so I hope it turns out. But I do want you to see. It's so light. My touch is so light. I always find it easier to pull towards myself than to flick away in any painting and whatever I'm doing. I just find that easier, that motion. So this is the Hooker Green. I keep calling it Hunter Green. Wonder if there's a paint called Hunter Green. Don't know if I've ever seen one. But I keep calling it that, so let's call it that. Maybe we'll make one. This is dry already, so I'm going in with my indigo and add it to my burnt sienna. So it's a very chocolate brown. It's a nice, beautiful chocolate brown. And every so often I'm going to drop a little bit in here, just so you can sort of see the center of those. Just a little bit. You can do this in red if you like, because sometimes there's a bit of a red, there's a bit of gold. I'm just trying to stick to the colors that I've been using so far. So you don't want to go straight through, you just want to add it here and there so you know where that particular branch is. I'm going to do the same here, but I'm going to do it in a lighter. I'm going to add a little bit more of the burnt sienna. Okay, so for the fun part, I'm going to get some white paint. Now I have P.H. Martin's bleed proof white. However, it dried up on me, and this little guy, this little jar here, I paid about $15 or so, and it crystallized on me, completely dried up. And I know that some people keep theirs for years and years and years, so I don't know what happened. I don't know why my room is so dry. So I'm going to get a loosey-goosey brush. So this is just my preference. So this is another script liner, and it's a size 4 from the Royal and Langnickel line. I'm going to dip it in to my watery bleed proof white. I'm going to take another brush and I'm going to tap. So there's snow to go along with that salt that we put on. And try and rotate, because what happens is you spray a pattern if you don't rotate your body. So I'm going to go to the next one. Whoops, it's a bit too much. Make sure it's like you want it to be drippy but not dripping. God knows where that went. It's going. It's not going on my painting. It's going everywhere else. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah, I think this brush was not the best one to choose, so I'm going to choose a different one. Try and clean that in a different water jug because it is quite murky. It makes your water very murky. Now I'm hitting it to see if I have better luck. Usually I just do like that. So let's try it. Why aren't I doing it that way? Now what I'm going to do is take this bleed proof white, and I have some white. If you have gouache or acrylic white, I'm going to mix it in. But wash your brushes right away if you're using acrylic. I shouldn't even be using my good brushes with it. Actually, I'm not going to. I'm going to rinse that. I'm going to use a super duper cheapy one. All the paint's coming off of it. I think I got this at a dollar store for glue and stuff. So I'm going to mix that into my bleed proof white. Something funky is happening. No. That did not mix very well. It doesn't like each other, I don't think. So I'm just going to take a bit of the acrylic here, and I'm going to drop some snow on the top of my right on the top of my pine cones, right on the edge. So I'm going to do that over here on this one. Right along the edges. So I'm trying to picture the part of the scale that's sticking out the most and where the snow would collect on it. So that's how I'm choosing where to put the snow, the white paint. There, I'm quite liking that. And after you finish your work, don't forget to sign it, because you actually, the first thing I'm going to suggest to you, because I just did it and I saw it, I stood up and then I saw an error, something I forgot. So that's what you do first. Walk away from your painting, come back, and then have a look at it. See if you've left anything out. And I think that looks pretty darn festive. It sure looks wintry. You can always write a message if you like. As I said, some people have told me they really want to use it as artwork. Maybe not Christmas, but... so you untape and just sign your work. Make sure you remember to put your name on it. I often forget to do that. And if it bleeds a bit, don't worry about it, because you're going to cut this in half and glue it to a card. I buy... they're at Michael's, they have sets of cards that you can buy to make your own. And they also have small sets. I know I've seen them at the Dollar Tree in Ontario. I can't remember if they have them at Dollarama or not. And so whatever size they are, you would just cut them down and glue it on. That's what I recommend doing. I'm feeling festive now. Okay, so that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed what we painted today. I hope you give it a try. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving me a like and subscribing to my channel. Happy watercoloring. Bye-bye.